and welcome, and thank you very much for joining us for our latest talk, which is all about the effect that the pandemic has had on our children's education and on family life. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Austin and I'm the founder of the Really Helpful Club. Delighted to introduce Caroline Edwards, our events director, Rowan Gerard and Francesca Ashby-Rudd, who run Really Helpful Club in Surrey, Sussex and Hampshire. All three of them are on the call. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Really Helpful Club, I thought it would be helpful to give you some background as to who we are and what our community is all about before we introduce you to our speakers. Our team each come from professional corporate backgrounds. And if I could ask you just to mute yourself.
Oh, why's that? Have you finished your...
Okay, just before I continue, I'm just going to ask anyone who's not on mute, please to mute themselves.
So if you choose to do your screen time now, when we... Okay, I've done it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can continue now.
Hang on, I've just got to go back to where I was. Okay, I'll just begin that bit again. And for those of you who are not familiar with Really Helpful Club, I thought it would be helpful to give you some background as to who we are and what our community is all about before we introduce you to our speakers. Our team each come from professional corporate backgrounds. I was a senior fund manager in the city, Caroline was a leading barrister, and Rowan and Francesca both had successful careers in PR. We've each taken career breaks and we're now on our journey building this vibrant and fast-growing community together. Now, as many of you will know, Really Helpful Club is an online network that brings together positive and like-minded people to help and connect one another in our personal and our business lives. We're founded on an ethos of shared advice, trusted recommendations, and a caring community. And everything we do is about word of mouth and the power of networks. This is a high-quality community that attracts positive thinking and like-minded people whose recommendations you can rely on, people you can trust. It's free to be a member, and with over 15,000 members, we are buzzing. Now, with limited everyday human contact right now, we all need to rely on virtual contacts, online connections, and a trusted community. We are coming into our own. And since the first lockdown, we have moved our highly successful events program online, and we have an exciting lineup of events in the coming weeks and months. This has allowed us to extend our reach. And in this vein, there has been so much demand to join our network that we have now launched into Surrey, Sussex, and Hampshire with our dedicated team based there. And the response has been extraordinary. We have so many exciting things planned in the coming months. So please make sure you visit the website regularly, look out for our regular newsletters, and be sure to contact Caroline about any events on our programme. Now, it feels like we've been homeschooling our children for the best part of a year. Our children are missing out on everything from interacting in the classroom, socialising with their friends, to taking part in sport and all those other activities, as well as the routine and the structure of the school day. Lockdown and the closure of schools are having a profound effect on our children's education and on family life. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our panel of experts who are going to address some of those issues, and they're going to advise on how we can help with the educational and the emotional needs of young people at a time when there's so much stress and so much uncertainty. This morning, we're joined by Alicia Drummond. Alicia is an adolescent therapist. She's the owner and founder of Team Tips, which works with schools, parents, and organisations to help them create environments in which young people can thrive. We'll then hear from Tash Rosin. Tash is the owner and founder of Teatime Tutors, who offer bespoke tuition for children between the ages of 7 and 11 to either boost their confidence or help them work towards sitting an entrance exam. And finally, we'll hear from Matthew Curnier. Matthew is the owner and founder of Capital Tuition Group, which is a collective of teachers that provide expert tuition in the core subjects for 11+ entrance exams, GCSE and A-level. Now, they're going to cover a wide range of topics, which will include homeschooling, exam prep after online schooling, how to manage the disappointment and frustration felt by school-aged children, especially in public exam years. And then lastly, how to motivate your children to perform to their best ability without the stimulation of in-person teaching. Now, please be assured that this list is by no means exhaustive, and there'll be plenty of time for you to each raise questions and also to raise your concerns. And before I hand over to Alicia, just a little bit of housekeeping and guidance about format and timings. The session will last just over an hour with a soft finish at 12:15. We want this to be very relaxed and informal and as engaging as possible. We are here to help you. This is a safe and supportive space. Now, as you will know, the talk is taking place on Zoom, so if your camera is on, you will be visible to everyone. And please, can you ensure that you keep your screens muted when each of the speakers are talking, because of course that will help to cut out any background noise and we won't miss anything they're saying. If you have any questions or you want to put any comments, then please pop them into the chat box as we go along. You can either make these visible to everyone or direct this to Caroline Edwards, who is going to collate all the questions and then run the question section at the end of the talks. We're going to record the session and we're delighted to send this to you, but this is on the proviso that we register those of you who are not already members of Really Help the Club as members. This means we can stay in touch with you, you'll receive our newsletters, and remember, you can always unsubscribe if you wish to do so. And if you do not wish to be subscribed, then please send Caroline Edwards an email to directly tell her this. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Alicia. And when Alicia has finished talking, I'll ask Alicia to hand over to Tash. And then Tash, when you finish talking, ask you to hand over to Matthew. So thank you very much. Please remember to keep your screens muted and enjoy what our speakers have to say. And be sure to keep putting questions and comments into the chat box. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Alicia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's very lovely to be with everybody. So good morning. And yeah, I'm Alicia Drummond. And first of all, I think I just want to say really how sad I am that this talk really needs to exist, but it does, because lots of us are feeling really anxious about lots of different things. And I think this lockdown seems to be causing a lot more problems than the last two. So at Teen Tips, we work with prep schools, senior schools, up and down the country, hundreds of schools, thousands of parents. So we generally have a pretty good gauge on what is going on in any given moment. We also conduct surveys from time to time to see how everybody's doing. And since the start of the pandemic last year, we have actually conducted 3. So the first one was done back in April, and top of the list of parental concerns at that time was screen time. Surprise, surprise, screen use, screen time, and followed by mental health. We redid the survey again at the end of August, and still top of the list was screen time, but actually after that was the worries about children reintegrating into school after such a long time apart, away, and then mental health. In the past 3 weeks, we have repeated the survey, hopefully, let's face it, for the last time. And this time things seem to have changed fairly dramatically. So in neither of the previous surveys did concerns about motivation come up as being of concern, but it has very definitely become a thing. Mental health has shot to the top of the list, and parents are reporting low morale, low motivation and low mood amongst children and teenagers alike. It's actually really worrying what's going on out there. this lockdown seems to be hitting the young particularly hard, and I don't think you know, we would be surprised to know why. You know, lack of novelty, at least we had that in the first lockdown, lack of connection with friends, lack of independence, particularly difficult for the teenagers whose developmental drive is to find their independence and their autonomy. Feeling like they can't change the situation, worrying about exams, worrying about getting behind on education, worrying about the lack of an ending to the whole of this. It seems to be much more difficult for people to find, to feel hopeful. And as a therapist, somebody needs to mute.
Yeah, yeah.
Theo
Yeah,
and
12
Jake,
what?
you're doing great maths there. Could you put it?
Sorry.
It's all right, don't worry. You sounds like you got the maths taped anyway, which is probably more than a lot of us are feeling at the moment. Yeah, it seems to be a lot more difficult, I think, for people to feel hopeful. And as a therapist, lack of hope and feeling helpless are two very, very big flags. So I thought might be helpful just to think a tiny bit about what we can do to boost their optimism, help them to keep feeling motivated. And I think the first thing in terms of optimism is that, you know, we need to be modeling it. In difficult times, our children really need to see that we are okay, because stress, I always think it's like a bit like having a kind of bouncy ball. I'm feeling stressed, and then I chuck it at you, and now you catch it, and it passes around very, very quickly. So they need us to be okay. They need us to be optimistic about the future, and that's difficult, you know, because none of us really know where we're heading, and not knowing where we're heading is unhelpful. So in terms of building optimism, I think we need to help them to see what the point of stuff is. You know, I think it was really interesting when Ofqual announced that they wanted to put in an element of testing into the GCSEs and A-levels. Suddenly the number of people coming onto, we have a wellbeing hub, and the number of people coming onto the weekly live Q&A saying, oh my gosh, it just seems like this is the final straw. My son says what's the point, doesn't want to get out of bed, he can't see, you know, that there's just, the whole thing seems hopeless. So for the older ones and for the younger ones, but particularly for the older ones, kind of helping them see what the point of all of this is. Because longer term, you know, they need to be getting the idea that we don't just do exams for the exam's sake. They are to build us towards a future that we want. I think for far too long, kids have felt that they are only really okay when they're producing those amazing results, because actually that's when they get lots and lots of attention, lots and lots of praise. But that focus on the end result has driven a pretty toxic culture of perfectionism, high levels of low self-esteem, a fear of failure, a fear of taking on challenges. I think it's killed creativity, initiative, and frankly, it's sucked the love and the fun out of a lot of learning. So it's easy to see why it's happened, but perhaps right now is an opportunity to reappraise. After all, you know, if we've learned nothing at all from the time of COVID, it is that health and relationships are actually what really, really matter in life. And interestingly, if you look at what your kids are going to need for the job markets of the future, there are 5 real things that are going to be super important. Number 1 is social skills. Number 2 is creativity. Number 3 is initiative. Number 4 is critical thinking. And the last one is cognitive flexibility. All of those things ultimately are way more important than grades. Now, I'm not going to say that getting decent grades isn't helpful, because they just open doors. But we need, as parents, to hold on to the fact that when one door doesn't open, there is always another door. And sometimes it's one that's perhaps more appropriate for your child in the long term. So study after study has shown that actually lifelong learning, so carrying on wanting to learn, is a major contributor to people's sense of happiness and fulfillment. So I think helping them see the point of keeping going. For the older ones, this is a time when they need to be looking forward to beyond school, to beyond even university, to start thinking about what it is that makes them tick. Where does their value system sit? What sparks joy? What can they genuinely see themselves doing on a longer term? Because so often in the world of therapy, I get kids coming in aged 20, 25, and they're like, well, you know, I went to the right school, got the right exams, I went to the right university, I got the right job, and I'm utterly miserable because they've ended up living somebody else's version of their lives. So this is a pretty golden opportunity right now to kind of take a little step backwards and to get them to think much, much longer term. Because if you understand where you're trying to get to, then the journey starts to make sense. And I think just dreaming big. So I've got a client at the moment who I was just chatting to, that's why I was a bit late on this morning, and she's doing her A-levels and she's struggling because it's really hard when you're not with your friends and you haven't got that sort of stimulation of the classroom setting. And she's like, oh, the pile just feels huge, but she desperately wants her to be a vet. So I said, right, okay, how about when you see yourself as a vet, what do you see yourself doing? And she said, oh, lambing. So I said, right, I want you to go and find a picture of a vet lambing, preferably with the vet to the back to you, but in the nice white coat and all the rest of it. And you're going to pin that up on the top of your screen. That is why you are doing this work. That is why you are keeping going and moving forwards. I think for the younger ones, just developing a love of learning is about encouraging them to be inquiring. So that initiative that I just spoke about being so important for the job markets of the future, you're more likely to be inquiring if learning is fun. So kind of, you know, just understanding that 20 minutes with you at home is probably the equivalent of about an hour in a classroom, because it's very, very intense one-on-one. But if you do, you know, you can learn so much outside of that time. So try not to get stressed about, oh my gosh, they're not sitting to that exact lesson plan. Maybe actually what you could learn, a bit of maths, doing a bit of cooking, you could just read a book, you could curl up on the sofa with an encyclopedia. Your job is to develop a love of learning. And there is absolutely nothing like getting your recycling bin out with a pot of glue and a load of paints in terms of encouraging creativity. So they don't always need to be entertained and busy. It's really important to let them explore and experiment. I think when we know why we're doing something, we can see the point of it. It's just that much easier to keep moving forwards. But if they're really struggling, then first of all, breaking things down into manageable chunks. A lot of the older ones are feeling really overwhelmed by the quantity of work. And then, of course, the schools are throwing in mock exams because they're in a panic that maybe they will need the results. So the workload is huge, particularly, I think, for the A-level ones. So, and if you're sitting there age 16, 15, 16, 17, looking at a huge pile of books and you're just like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start, then the chances are that you end up not starting. So getting them to break things down into tiny manageable chunks. So rather than looking at a whole subject, maybe look at one small topic within it, having a timer, having a reward. If they're still not motivated, then we have to drill a little bit deeper to find out where the resistance lies. And resistance is that thing that sits between thinking about doing something and actually getting on and doing it. And resistance is really interesting because sometimes it's a fear of failure, but equally sometimes it's a fear of success, which you have to think about that one for a second. But maybe being successful at my A-levels means I end up going on to do something that maybe somebody else has pushed me towards doing, which isn't actually really what feels right for me. And I can speak with authority on that one because that was exactly where I sat age 17. I was supposed to be going to Oxford to do French, and you know, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I unconsciously sabotaged at that point. So your resistance is it's that driving force that stops you. So it could be the fear of success, the fear of failure. It could be just feeling totally overwhelmed. It could be I feel really stuck, but I don't want to ask for help because I'm not able to make demands. It could be I'm missing out on the collaborative approach of school, in which case maybe it would be really helpful to you have a study buddy. You know, allowed to meet up with one person. Why not have one person that is your study buddy? Remembering that actually we are more likely to be motivated when we receive praise than when we feel nagged, got at, or pressurized. Now, I don't know about your kids, but if they're anything like mine, if you start nagging, they know that you've got at least another 3 octaves to go before anybody actually needs to move. So why would you bother doing it on the first request? Instead, we want to, you know, maybe just a one-worder. Oh, I think it's time to get cracking, or maths. But also really trying to notice when they get it right, when they put in a tiny bit more effort than they managed yesterday, and make sure you let them know that you've noticed. Also, letting them see you give yourself positive feedback. About 70% of our behavioural learning is done via role modelling, and you are their primary role models. So if you know, when you do something and it goes well, you know, you might say, gosh, I was really pleased with how that went this morning. I think it must be because I prepared really well. And what we do when we do that is we teach them how to give themselves that positive affirmation. And we develop what is known as an internal locus of evaluation, which means if we have an internal locus of evaluation, it means that we're not reliant on the praise of others to feel okay about ourselves. And that's a huge part of self-esteem. And then I think I would just like to finish by saying that, you know, it's worth remembering that in 10 years' time, your kids are not going to remember what they've learnt during this time. They are going to remember how they felt. So maybe this is just a time to try and make them feel safe, make them feel secure, make them attach their value system to something higher than perhaps they have before, and make the most of the time, because once they've flown your nest, it might feel like it's a million years away right now, but once you've flown their nest, they've flown your nest, you want them to want to come back again. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Tash.
Lovely, thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. Sorry. Lovely, thank you so much, Alicia. What brilliant words. And thank you, Sarah and Caroline in the Really Helpful Club. And good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here today and talk alongside this wonderful panel. I'm sure that this next slide may resonate with some of you. I think everyone's feeling the same at the moment. And today I'm going to be talking and focusing on home learning for primary age children, but a lot of this will apply across the board to many ages. It looks like schools are likely to remain closed for a bit longer, and I understand the challenges that parents are facing. As Alicia said, it seems that this third lockdown is proving much harder and more overwhelming than the first. And I want to help restore your balance in your home, support your child, and make learning a positive experience again. I hope that I can help you feel more confident and reassured that you really are doing everything you can. And I'll try and help you understand a little bit more about how your child learns and what you can do to support them and keep both them and yourself motivated. Tempting as it might be to put the teacher hat on, don't. You are not a teacher, you are a facilitator. So put the red pen away and leave it to the experts. You are doing brilliantly. Everyone is in the same boat as you. So if you feel that you need help, ask. Find other parents in your child's class and message them. Start a WhatsApp group so you can all chat. Call or email your teacher, or get a tutor in from some additional support. Teachers are not expecting you to teach new ideas and concepts. They are asking that you support your learners, love them, and care for them. Children are unique, as we all are. So to do this, we need to keep things simple until you're confident that you're doing well. But simplicity is the key here. Take time to set up a routine and find out what works for you. And I hope that some of these practical tips you can take with you today. This may sound obvious and may be difficult for some, but please do try and designate somewhere that your child can and is learning. This needs to be a quiet space, devoid of any distractions, that will continue to be their learning space from now on. If this is your child's bedroom, please take away things you know will distract them. If you know your child loves their Lego, move it out. They can have it back later, but for the hours that they need to be focused, please don't let them have it. Once you've established this workspace, please keep it. Don't move them about. They need to associate that this one area is where they work. Be aware that if your child is in the kitchen, they will be distracted by literally everything. So if you are in a noisier area of the house, do try and get them some headphones. This will eliminate surrounding noise for them and their teacher. As parents, You have a significant influence over your children's belief systems and how they develop. The language that you use and the actions that you take show your children what you expect. Communicating the values of hard work and effort supports learning that leads to success. That communication aids the development of their self-confidence to challenge themselves without the fear of failure. Children with a growth mindset do not let failure define them. Instead, they use setbacks to motivate them. By modeling this mindset, children will be encouraged to love challenges, enjoy effort, and learn that making mistakes, struggling through obstacles, and rebounding from failure are natural life experiences. Encourage your child to be resilient and not give up, even when they find something difficult or frustrating, and celebrate their mistakes as gateways to learning. The next time you're tempted to correct your child's homework, hold back. You could be denying them a vital opportunity to learn, grow, and improve. What are you finding difficult and how can you change this? So for example, make sure you have paper and ink for your printer. Ensure your child has pencils, pens, and paper ready for their day ahead. If your child's teacher is sending through work to print, try and print it at night if you can. This is one less thing to have to do in the morning. Most teachers will try and send work through with enough time to print, but if they don't, ask them. Chesterton's estate agents are offering free printing for school children. So explore your local area and see if any other businesses are offering the same or similar service. I see regular updates like this on the Nextdoor app. So have a look and see what's out there for you. Children should be drinking throughout the day, but please try and limit this to break times. They wouldn't be eating and drinking all day if they were at school. I had an hour-long lesson with a child the other day who spent it slurping a smoothie through a straw. And I have to say, with my extremely sensitive microphone, the sounds were quite off-putting. Be prepared to assist your child, but don't do the work for them. This doesn't help anyone. And the teacher will have no idea what your child can or cannot do. If your child is really struggling, let their teacher know and submit their work regardless. This will give their teacher a really good idea of what to do next and how to tackle the problem with your child the next time they meet. If they are logging into online live lessons, please try and be on time. This does sound obvious, but if your teacher is teaching 30 children on Zoom and there are children logging in late, it's very distracting for the other children, let alone the teacher. Try creating a visual timetable or give them a daily schedule. Children are used to routine and they like structure, and try to be consistent during the week and they will know what's expected of them. For younger children, create a picture timetable. These are easily printed off the internet so that they know what they're meant to be doing and when. Give your child a clock if they can tell the time, and try and stick to the routine as much as possible. And timetable in breaks, walks, exercise, Zoom calls with friends, etc. This will help you too if you're trying to work from home. This leads me to being consistent. Find a sustainable pattern to the day that suits you and your family environment and stick to it. Don't worry if it's different from other people's. Everyone's day is different, but it has to work for you. The more you and your child does this, the more open they'll be to focusing on their schoolwork. It may take a few days to establish, but that's the key here. It must work for all of you. So make sure you've agreed this routine together as a family, particularly so the onus doesn't fall on one parent to be the enforcer. Do try singing from the same hymn sheet. Teachers don't expect children to do every single subject or even to work at the pace they're setting the work. They want academic progress, but not at the expense of their mental health. So communication is key. Communicate with your child. Ask them how their day was, how their lessons were, and what they learned. Ask them if there was anything they didn't understand and what or how their day could have been better, and communicate this with the school if you feel you need to. If the school don't hear from you, they will assume that you're doing really well and have no issues. You could also ask your child to play teacher for the day and explain their maths to you. In this way, you can gauge if they've understood their work. If they're not fully locking in basic maths concepts, it'll be difficult for them to progress as the work gets harder each week. If they're stuck, press pause and go back, even if this means they have to revise concepts from last year. Get your kids outside. They need the fresh air. They need to let off steam. Please try and make sure they get a good run around regardless of the weather. And put this into their timetable so they're working towards their outdoor time. Again, this routine will really help settle them and keep them more focused. If there's one thing I would say that all children should be doing at the moment is reading. So please try and schedule in 30 minutes of quiet reading time daily and not just in the evening. Obviously, you can adapt this time for particular age groups, but I do think this is a really important thing to do. It can take any form, a Kindle, a book, a magazine. For the younger ones, set a timer so they know how long they've got, and hopefully this should give you 30 minutes peace as well. But do take away any devices, so they must concentrate on the task in hand, and do make it totally independent. Your priority now as a parent is to keep stress levels down. So if home learning is causing angst and stress for everyone, you have permission to ditch it or differentiate the curriculum. The reality is children's brains cannot absorb academic work if they are stressed. Cortisol levels interfere with the brain's higher function. So lower your expectations and practice being a good parent. Allow your child time to talk to their friends on the phone, using House Party, on Zoom or Skype. They really need to socialize with their mates and talk nonsense. They do this in school, and there's no reason they shouldn't be doing this now. Find out what motivates your child. Yes, it's important your child or children are learning maths, English, science, etc. But forcing them to complete worksheet after worksheet, if they're not responding, won't last longer than 5 minutes. It's important that they're doing things they want to do. So chess, coding, filmmaking, backgammon, painting, drawing. These soft skills or character skills help with independence, resilience, courage, bravery, and kindness. In schools, the emphasis at the moment is the school curriculum. So you could arrange for your child to have an online Zoom call with a friend, and they do the project together, much like Alicia said. Scrap the worksheets and be creative if you want to. Let your children tell their story. Give them art materials and writing supplies in favour of allowing creativity to flow organically. Let your child know that through hard work, they can achieve anything. Effort equals success rather than intelligence equaling success. So your child's attitude towards learning should be a positive one. Try to focus on their efforts rather than the outcome. This was written by Carol Dweck, and the sentence I like the most is, if parents want to give their children a gift, the best thing they can do is to teach their children to love challenges, be intrigued by mistakes, enjoy effort, and keep learning. Connect with your child. I hate to say it, but if your child loves playing Minecraft or something similar, play it with them. Ask them to teach you how to play the game and explain it to you. A shared interest will really help your communication skills with your child, and they'll be excited to share it with you. If you listen and empathize the way you would like them to listen and empathize with you, you're setting a really good example. At the end of the day, ask them to do a show and tell with you and celebrate their efforts with you and tell them how proud you are. If you need to, take the afternoon off. Children concentrate in short bursts and are most productive in the mornings. So try and focus on maths and English in the mornings and don't worry about anything else. Head out to the park or do things they enjoy in the afternoon, such as sports, art, reading, science, or just relaxing. And finally, if you need some extra support or advice, call a tutor. Treat your tutor a bit like a personal training session. You can get them in for a few sessions to support or boost subject knowledge and confidence. All tutors out there are fully prepared for these types of calls and are willing to help, whether it's for a few weeks, a month, or longer. So take care, stay safe, and remember you're doing amazingly well. And for that, I'd now like to hand over to Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely. It's absolutely delightful to see so many people here today. It's honestly the closest thing I feel like I've had to a party in months. So thank you for all being here, and thank you as well, Sarah and Caroline, for having me and your kind introduction. As they say, my name is Matthew, and I'm the director and founder of Capital Tuition Group. Now, Capital Tuition Group is a tuition company that only uses qualified teachers. So a lot of what I've got to say today has come directly from a lot of my colleagues who are working in schools, heads of department, heads of year, heads of faculty, heads of academy chains, or even head teachers. Now, before we get stuck in earnest, what I'd like to do is start to get a feel for who we have represented here in terms of the age groups and the year groups that your sons and or daughters in. So if you feel comfortable, I'd love you to head to the chat part of Zoom and just drop in the chat box what year group your sons and or daughters are in. Thank you for doing that. And in the meantime, whilst you're doing that, I am an incorrigible teacher, and I always like to sort of set a little bit of a quiz, and this little part of the chat will have a quiz in it, and I will tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So I'm just going to have a quick look and see who we've got in the chat. Okay, so we've got, thank you, Fiona. We've got a year 2, year 6, and year 7. That's lovely. We've got lots of GCSE. Thank you, Philippa, year 10, year 8 and 12. Lovely. So we've got lots of primary and lots of secondary as well. Thank you for doing that, everyone. So let's begin. The chat that I've got for you today mainly focuses on the secondary sector and national exams and what we know so far. So let's recap the 3 facts that we have at the moment. The first fact that I want to address with you is the fact that national exams have been cancelled. On January the 4th of this year, the government said in the circumstances, we don't think it's possible for all exams to go ahead as normal. So that's the first fact, that exams are cancelled. The second thing is that Gavin Williamson, our Secretary of State for Education, has assured us that we are not going to be using the algorithm this year to moderate or modulate grades. Now, I'd also like to hear from you at this stage, so please again head on to the chat to see whether you are pleased about that, whether you're not pleased about that, or whether you're relatively indifferent. So tell me in the chat if that is something that reassures you, the fact that we haven't got any algorithms, or whether you would probably have preferred to have it. If you feel comfortable to do so, I'd love to see and gauge what people's opinions are on that. So that's the second fact. The second fact is that we've got no algorithm in play this year. And the third fact that I want to address with you is that Ofqual, as you are all aware, are currently in a 2-week consultation period. Now that 2-week consultation period has probably expired, so we are due to receive some announcements from Ofqual at any point. And we have a new interim chair of Ofqual, a gentleman called Ian Bockham, and his interim chief regulator, a gentleman called Simon Liebus. There has been a little bit of information about mini exams that are that's sort of traveling through the rumor mill at the moment, but I'm going to just park that for a minute and then come back to that in a moment. So let us go through the implications of these facts that we've got. Well, the first one is that exams have been cancelled. Now, I've noticed that some of you have said in the chat, not all of them have been cancelled. You're absolutely right. The statement is not as simple as that. It's a very simple statement in and of its own, but it's not the full truth as far as we know. So there are 2 main pools of exams. We've got the normal pool of exams, which are the normal GCSE and A-levels, and we'll call them normal for the purposes of this chat. And then you've got international exams. Now, exam boards have created international exams for their international market. Now, you don't ever need to know the difference if you were in a global pandemic, and here we are. The main difference is that the normal GCSE and A-levels are those that are regulated by Ofqual, and international GCSE and A-levels, and we can include pre-U's in that, we can include international baccalaureate in that. They have not been cancelled as of yet, but so essentially Ofqual and the government organise and regulate the normal GCSE exams. So the statement where they have said exams are cancelled pertains to that. The international GCSE and A-levels, because they're not regulated by Ofqual, they fall outside of that statement. Now, up until 3 days ago, the majority, if not all, as far as I'm aware, of exam boards that deliver international GCSE and A-levels have said that it is business as usual. They are going to go ahead with them. Now, on the 3rd of February, Edexcel and Pearson have turned around and said that they are now cancelling their exams. They are quite a big provider of international GCSEs. Now, Cambridge, which is another major player in international GCSEs and A-levels, have decided to wait until the Ofqual announcements are made. So we are yet to see what's going to happen there. Now, my tip for you is, if you're a parent, there's going to be quite a bit of confusion. International GCSE and A-levels are often delivered in independent schools. So if your children go to independent schools, then they might find themselves in a situation where they are having exams from both pools, from the normal GCSE and A-levels, as well as the international ones. So I guess my tip at this point would be to say, find out what subjects your students or your children are doing, find out which exam board they are doing for each subject, and that should be relatively accessible information if you go on the school's website, and then keep abreast of all of those exam boards' websites just to see what their updates are, because things are changing and are changing relatively rapidly. And I think as we get the information out of Ofqual over the next X period of time, we will be getting some more information. So that's my first tip. We've got the exams have been cancelled, but that is a complicated statement in and of its own. So keep abreast of the exam boards and find out what exam boards for each subject your children are doing. The second fact that I addressed was the fact that we've got no algorithm. Now, I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat to see what sort of things are being said. Deborah, thank you so much. You said, yes, I'm pleased that no algorithm being used, but there is a bit of worry about the consistency, etc. There seems to be a general trend saying that we're quite pleased that the algorithm isn't going to be used. And I have to say, that's the feedback that I've been getting from a lot of our parents here. But what's the implication at this point? Well, the implication is that if there is no algorithm, and there is a high likelihood that we are still going to be using centre assessed grades or CAGs, then we're going to rely quite heavily on the teachers to inform what the CAGs will be. Now, teachers are excellent at doing this, but what they do need is a lot of evidence to back up what grade they are going to submit for a particular student. And in order to feel comfortable about doing that, teachers will want to lean quite heavily on evidence. They will only submit a grade once they've got a good, decent amount of evidence. Now, as we all know, when your year, if your children are either in year 11 or year 13 now, then we know that the last 2 years of their academic courses have been relatively patchy. And so doing a consistent series of summative assessments has been a little bit complicated. It's been tricky. And some schools have found that they haven't been able to do it as much as they would like. So I can very easily envisage that more assessments will be done in due course and as we go down through the next few weeks and months. Some schools have been absolutely incredible and have been really consistent about doing summative assessments, but some of the feedback that I'm getting from my teachers at this point is, you know what, I've got a great bunch of data, but for these sets of kids or for that year group or for my particular maths group over here, they're just not performing as well as I know they could. So I'm going to keep doing summative assessments and mini quizzes and whatever it might be so that I get the evidence to be able to submit the grade that I want to submit for them to constitute part of their CAG, their CAG. So what's the message at this point? The message with the no algorithm is that we're going to need more evidence, or lots of evidence is still going to need to be collected. And so I'm afraid that more assessments are very likely to be the case on the horizon. So my tip here is continue revising. And whilst I know that's hard, I know that Tash and Alicia have sort of highlighted methods and ways in which that might be easily done. But do encourage your children at this point to continue revising. And let's come to that third fact that we know about. Ofqual consultation is due to come to an end. There has been sort of through the rumour mill, and lots of teachers are talking about it still now, this thing about mini exams. Now, the idea behind this is that exam boards, in lieu of the official exams, will send to schools mini exams, which they are to administer to their students, which the teachers will then themselves mark, and I suspect will then submit the marks back to the exam board. Now, there is every likelihood that the exam board will at this point then ask for samples of these mini exams in the way that they would ordinarily do in a coursework-based subject. You go, oh, I'm going to get a sample from that school, I'm going to get a sample from that department, and a sample from that academy chain, because the exam board's main concern is that there is an equal distribution, or an even distribution that's fairly marked and fairly represented, so that there isn't a spike of highly performing students in one particular year's cohort. So that's the exam board's main aim, really, which is why I think that they're suggesting these mini exams. I would say one thing about the mini exams. It's been dubbed mini exam, but we don't actually know at this point, as far as I'm aware. And it could be a little bit misleading, because mini exams, I think, would be better termed mini assessments, because assessment doesn't have to take the form of an exam. There are other ways of doing summative assessments, and that can be done by courseworks or MCQs or things like that. So what's the point? What's the implication about the fact that these mini exams seems to be, you know, quite a plausible idea? Well, again, it's sort of the same as the second point that I made, which is assessments are still going to take place. Even if the exams are cancelled, assessments are still very, very much on the horizon. So at this point, I would say that, yeah, continue to revise, as difficult as that may be and as low as the motivation may be. I would really encourage your student, particularly if they're in an exam cohort, to put their heads down and continue with revision. So that's essentially all I want to share with you. In summary, we've got check out the exam boards, and see what the exam boards are saying. There aren't going to be any algorithms taking place, so continue to revise, because the teachers are going to want to get some more evidence. And mini exams are likely to occur and will constitute CAGs or CAGs. And so again, I would encourage your students to revise. You know, the picture is very different from that of last year. Last year, it was a very retrospective approach. And of the 2-year course, 1.5 years had been completed. And so we were able to look back at that evidence and go, okay, here we go. We can attribute that grade to such and such a student, and so on and so forth. But this year it's very different. The education that they've received has been very, very patchy. And so even though exams are cancelled, it is absolutely imperative that your children continue to get grades in order for them to be able to progress onto the next academic year. Now, we don't know what form that will take, but I'm pretty confident that a continuation of assessments will be in play for the next few weeks and the next months or so. And so again, my message is keep studying, and the hard work, I promise, will pay off. It really will. Now, let me come back to the quiz that I sort of proposed to you. The prize for which will be a large bunch of flowers from Capital Tuition Group. It is the first person who is comfortable and the fastest finger first of who can summarize the 3 main points and the implications. So I'm going to put that down to the floor, over to you, and then I will hand back to Sarah and Caroline. And thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thanks, Matt. Do you want to leave a bit of time for someone to win the flowers?
Yeah, shall we mention your view on the, well, their questions.
Questions.
I think we've got a little bit of time. Gosh, there's so many people here. Yes, we'll just leave a little bit of time and then we'll come back. Whoever puts the first 3, the points down first, I'll get in contact and send them our Capital Tuition Group flowers.
Sounds fabulous. Right, I've got lots of questions, so let's get on with those. How do we help our children with distractions such as the cat, being able to get snacks and drinks at any time? This person has 3 children, all learning at home, and they are all doing different things at different times, so it's really difficult to police. The mother is run ragged, trying to enforce rules, particularly as she has a very difficult, depressed teenager. I think I'll throw that one to Tash first, if that's okay.
Yes, good morning. Hi there. Oh gosh, that's a tricky one. I think, as I said in my chat earlier, I think structure and schedules are really important. So I'm sorry about your depressed teenager, but I think perhaps just focusing on two that you, or was it 3 kids you had? 3 kids. If you can get 2 just for 2 hours in the morning, perhaps 9 till 10, a break, and then 10 to 11, just baby steps would be my suggestion. Schedule in their English and maths, like I said, you know, they work better in the mornings. And then hopefully you can spend some time with your teenager. Alicia, I hope I'm not treading on your toes here. That's what I would suggest for now, but just baby steps, take it easily, don't stress out about it. The more you stress, they'll get stressed. So schedule in that hour, start with an hour, start with half an hour and build it up to an hour that can build up to 2 hours. Schedule in the breaks, do that visual timetable for them if they're younger, let them know what they should be doing and when they should be doing it. Yeah, I think that's as much as we can do at the moment.
Okay, so I think the year groups in question are year 6, 8 and 9. So Matt, do you have any help on that, given you specialise in secondary schools?
Yeah, well, I think Tash has really said it. I think it must be very difficult, and my sympathies go to you for being able to juggle 3. That's a job. I suppose there might be a tendency, because of your elder child is sort of deemably more independent, but I think structure, to reiterate Tash, is important, and to build it up. I don't think I've got much more to add, but I think Tash gave a good succinct little tip there.
And Alicia, can you help, given we have a depressed teenager? That seems to be your remit.
Yeah, I mean, with the younger ones, I suppose there is an element of setting yourself up as well to make it as easy as possible. So if they're constantly going to stroke the cat, then maybe the cat gets shunted out for lesson times. If they're constantly going to the cupboards, maybe, you know, there's a kind of, sounds a bit draconian, but there's a lock on the cupboards until it's actually snack time. So you limit the amount of choice that they've actually got to get distracted, would be a starting point. With a depressed teenager, I suppose you've got to have a diagnosis, I mean, of depression. So I'm assuming that if you're saying you've got a depressed teenager, you've already been to your GP. But I think with all mental health, the most important thing is early intervention. So try and get help on board for them as quickly as possible. If it's low mood, then that's slightly different, and with that it's about getting them to help themselves as well. So maybe even getting the older ones involved with helping the little ones with work is quite a good way of giving them a sense of purpose, and kind of bringing them together to actually do something that will boost their feeling of being okay.
Thank you. Alicia, I think I'm going to ask you this next question, if that's okay. As the children already have so much screen time with online lessons, what advice would you give in respect of time on gaming, meaning even more screen time after lessons have finished?
Yes, this is one that's been rumbling on now for the last year, and it's causing everybody a drama. I think very, very simple. Right now, we would have all have been well and truly stuffed without screens for the last year. So let's celebrate the fact that they are giving them a sense of connection. They're giving them something to do. A lot of the gaming that they're doing is very creative. It allows them to talk to their friends, to collaborate, to compete. So it's not all bad. Having said that, we need to it's about keeping life in balance. So I was going to say, you know, it's a little bit like, I wouldn't give you an entire plate of chips followed by a bowl of sweets for every single meal. And so it's not okay for you just to be doing screen time. So if you can show me that you can fit in exercise, talking to us all in real time, that you're eating properly, that the screens are downstairs a good hour before it's time to go to bed, that we don't have any of us have screens at things like family meals, then I don't think we have a problem.
And what if you're
going to mute myself?
Sorry, what if you're in a conflict with a 12-year-old who just wants to play Fortnite after school?
Then you need a screen contract. So if you head over to Teen Tips, we have a wellbeing hub which parents can join. It's free for a week, so you can go and check it out. And actually we have got a free webinar next week. So if you join now, you can join that for free, on parenting during lockdown. And we talk about, within the hub, there is a screen contract. And you need to, especially with teenagers, it needs to be a process of negotiation. So you say, look, state the problem. The problem is that, you know, I can't be monitoring your screen time all the time. So you never want to make a screen time about the number of minutes that they're on, because then you've got to police it. So I suggest that we all identify times of the day that are screen free, places perhaps in the house that are screen free, and then look at our just making sure we've got enough balance in there. Then we're going to do the screen contract. I'm going to sign it, you're going to sign it, we're going to put it somewhere safe and probably photocopy it, because they tend to get ripped up in the heat of the moment. And there needs to be a consequence. There's no point in making any kind of boundary or without a consequence. It's just words, it doesn't mean anything.
Thank you. Matt, are private tutors allowed to submit evidence for grade assessments in public examinations?
Yes, good question. So there are quite a number of cases at the moment whereby, because of last year, students have not gotten the grade that they wanted. So a lot of them are retaking particular A-level. Now, what happened last year is that we've got a number of cases with Capital Tuition Group where the exams have now been officially cancelled, but the client and the student that we're working with is going to continue trying to get a new A-level or redo their current A-level. The answer is, at the moment, yes. There hasn't been any particularly formal way of regulating that that we are aware of at present, and it's very, very helpful if the case stands whereby the student is currently affiliated with their old school as an exam candidate. In that case, we can then collate lots of evidence. We then provide a covering letter, and the tutor, you know, and that's certified by me, and then we submit that to the student's school, who then serves as that student's exam center. So the answer is yes. At the moment, yes, that is the case.
Great, thank you. Tash, what is your view on the 11 plus for next year, given what has been happening this spring?
Oh gosh, that's a whole minefield question. The 11 plus this year was very, very well handled by some schools and very, very badly handled by other schools. I would like to think that the majority of schools now have agreed. I think the early news was that they were going to delay the entrance exams from November to January, and that they were all going to take the form of online. But every school, it's such a minefield. The independent sector can really do what they want. The maintained sector can do what the government tells them, and they have to agree it. So the grammar school entrance exams have been agreed that they will be delayed. Independent schools last year, the majority of them did a really fantastic job of all agreeing to do one online test, which made perfect sense, and share the results amongst all the schools. So children were only having to sit one exam, and that really took the stress off everybody, apart from a number of schools that decided they were going to do their own thing and just throw the cat amongst the pigeons. I'm afraid there's no printed or proper useful answer here at the moment. It's a watch this space for now. I'm not sure if Matthew can shed any light on that, if you know anything about that, but for me, from where I'm sitting, I'm watching the news, reading the articles, waiting to see what happens. But as yet, I think the focus is so much on GCSE and A-level, particularly as they're coming up sooner, that we've got time to work towards the 11 plus and what they're going to do.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more than I can add to what you've already said. I think the problem that we're having in schools at the moment is that the communication between the powers that be and those who are administering schooling, i.e. schools, there is very little communication from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and the feedback that I'm getting from my colleagues. In fact, there was a tweet that I saw when the schools may or may not have been closed at the beginning, at the beginning of the year, where people didn't know if the schools were being closed, and the tweet just simply said, "Does anybody know whether my school should be shut?" And the reply was, "Oh, ask your head teacher, and they should be able to inform you." And they replied, "I am the head teacher." So it's very difficult. We're getting, to be honest, a lot, and you know, I don't think that anybody's going to be annoyed at my saying this. The information that we get is probably the same information that you get, because we're getting it from the media channels in the same way that you are. And then we've perhaps got a little bit of an ability to perceive and see what that might look like because we're in the education sector. But the information that we're being drip fed is sort of the same information that you parents as well have access to. So it's a bit difficult to say. I think going to be a lot of we'll have to wait and see when it comes to the 11 plus. They will go ahead, I'm pretty sure, wouldn't you say, Tash?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, can I just add one point there? Definitely they'll be going ahead. But what I would also ask all of you to not do is call the schools and ask, because they don't know either. So everybody is in this, is trying to get through this year and work out, like as Matthew said, you know, the government are drip feeding. So don't call the school and ask. They will let you know. They will. They were brilliant last year and they will do the same this year. So it's really keep on working towards it. But yes, I'm afraid there's no definitive answer for that one.
There seems to be some suggestion that they might use the ISEB.
They used the ISEB last year. And as I said, unfortunately, a large percentage, I would say 65 to 70% of schools that signed up to the ISEB used it, and they shared their results amongst the schools. But 35 to 40% of schools decided they were still going to do their own thing, which meant a lot of students didn't know what kind of exam they were sitting. And that made it really difficult for parents supporting at home, for tutors trying to disseminate information to parents and students alike, and for the student. It was seriously stressed. Are they sitting an ISEB online test? Are they doing a written test? It was quite intense during December and November, but the majority of the schools really did well, and the ISEB was a great success. So hopefully, you know, if that's the way they're going to go, hopefully for January next year, it'll work.
And it's a known quantity, so let's hope that more of them embrace it.
Yeah.
Alicia, please can we have some advice on anxiety over returning to school and worrying about reintegrating with friends? My 16-year-old was very anxious last time.
Yeah, and I think, you know, lockdown for some kids has been a monumental blessing, because it's meant that they haven't had to do the social side of school. But then, as you say, going back in again after is much more alarming, and anxieties for that particular group is very high at the moment. With all anxiety, the answer is that you learning to face your fear. Anxiety is a bit like a wave, you know, it's like learning to surf the waves. They come up, it comes up, and it comes up, and you think, I can't do this, and then suddenly you'll notice it starts to come down the other side. So the more exposure that she can be given in terms of socially, so as I say, just trying to meet up with perhaps one friend every week, so that you've got a cohort of, you know, 3 or 4 that you have at least seen in real time between now and when they actually go back into school, would be really helpful. There is a really good app actually called Clear Fear, which you can use to help manage anxiety. So I would recommend that. It's produced by somebody called Dr. Nahara Kraus, who I really respect. It's great. But getting them rather than, you know, empathy. I know it's really hard. And then ask, don't tell. What could you do that will make this easier for you going forward? Because she's, did you say 16? You know, she needs to sort of, if we can encourage her to take ownership of the problem and to come up with a few of her own solutions, then A, she'll feel more likely to do them. B, she's going to feel heard because you've actually listened to it from her perspective. And hopefully that will really pay off a little bit further down the line. But it is gradual exposure. So, you know, you may be just saying to her, well, why don't you go in for the first morning, and if at break time it feels too much, then we can stop, and then the next day we'll go for a little bit longer. So you gradually increase the exposure is a good way of getting over anxiety as well.
I think to remember that she won't be alone. That's the big thing. There are so many children who are really quite happy being at home, and it's going to be a big step. And they're also going to be worrying about bringing the virus back home to their parents and their grandparents. So there's an awful lot that goes into this particular problem. Right.
There is, and I think that's the kind of, oh, sorry, Caroline.
Sorry, no, go on.
I think that's the, we have to help children understand the difference between real problem worries and the hypothetical worries. So the real problem worries is, yes, I feel anxious about going back into school. What can I do about it? The hypothetical worries is, what if I give my grandparents or my parents COVID? And for those ones, it's a what if, it's a worst case scenario, but they can make us feel very, very anxious. So techniques to manage those are really helpful. And there's one called the worry delay technique, which I don't know how much time you've got, but probably not got time for it now. But it's very simple, actually. I'm going to do it really quickly because then it's done. All you have to do is write down the things that you're worried about. Have a look at it. Can I do something about this? Yes, do it. Can't do anything about it. Right, I'm going to put it into a safe place, whether it's a worry bag, your phone, or a drawer. And now I'm going to schedule a time to come back and look at it. And you only schedule a time once or twice every 24 hours. And the rest of the time, if that worry pops up again, you're going to go, not your time right now. I'll revisit you a bit later. So it should free up large parts of the day that are worry-free. Back to you.
That's a great tip. And I think that's a tip not just for children, it's for adults as well. Yeah, I think I might start that.
I think we can all do with it right now.
And I can fully endorse Nahara Kraus. She was the psychologist who helped kids at King's College School in Wimbledon, where my 3 boys went. And my first ever experience of King's was going to an evening where she spoke. And she spoke about bouncing, not breaking through problems. And I've used that ever since. And that was now 9 years ago. And I think it's such a really good visual way of explaining that we all encounter problems. It's just how you manage them that really determines whether you're going to cope or not. Right, I have no more questions. So thank you very much. And I go to hand back to Sarah.
Okay, sorry about that. Getting problems with the mouse. Well, thank you very much, Alicia, Tash, Matthew. Huge amount of information there, huge amount of advice. I hope very much that you found everything very useful, and thank you very much to all of you for engaging so much, whether it was in the polls, the chat, Matthew's exam at the end, and now in the questions as well. I think we have a winner. Is that right, Caroline? Is it? I
think it's Iona, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, I think it's Antonia. Yeah, and Matthew, you're going to have to adjudicate, but I think that's Antonia. Is that answer correct at 11:57?
I think it's Iona, so congratulations. I shall declare the winner. Congratulations, Iona.
Well, I had Iona, but actually I think it's Antonia. And could we?
Iona, definitely. 11:56, exam boards, be up to date, 2 no algorithms, so evidence.
Oh, okay, because I do apologise, because Iona's put in 2.
So stay motivated to revise.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Over to you, Matt.
Well, I think I'm going to stick with my original decision. Iona, a big bunch of flowers come to you, and we'll connect after this so that I can get your details, etc. But thank you so much for participating.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone, and thank you so much for your engagement, all your questions. It's been absolutely brilliant. As I said to you just now, we will be sending you a recording of the talk, but obviously on the proviso that we do register you as a member of Really Help the Club if you're not already registered. As ever, please do contact Caroline with any questions that you may have. And for everyone, let me leave you with this message. For all of us, don't forget, at the end of the day, all of your hard work will pay off, despite all of the disruption. For all of us parents, don't stress, you are doing amazingly well. And as Tash says, you don't have to be teachers. You are doing amazingly well. And as Alicia said, at the end of the day, when we're all said and done, remember, cast your mind forward to the next 10 years and beyond. You will not remember what you learned in this time, but I know you will remember how you felt. And I think carry that message away with you today, tomorrow, and beyond. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. And we're now going to bring it to a formal end. So please do just click on the leave button, and we look forward to connecting with you again. Thank you very much.